Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Giant Talk. It's Roger, and I'm here again with another interesting guest, because, of course, we always have interesting guests, who is one of, I think, probably the most experienced people when it comes to specific, involvement around OKRs. One of the most experienced, certainly one of the longest experienced. I'd like to introduce you all to Henrik-Jan Van Der Pol. Now, Henrik-Jan, you and I met a good few years ago. I think probably initially over some beers in Berlin, but that's a different story. But yeah, welcome to Giant Talk, Henrik-Jan. Do you want to just tell our listeners what you do, where you fit in, a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Henrik. I'm Dutch. I moved to Berlin in I think it was 2013. That was after going through law school and after working as a management consultant for a while. And then as I moved to Berlin, I made my first move into entrepreneurship and started my first company, which is around a decade ago. And that company is Perdoo, which is an OKR software, and that's also how we got connected quite some time ago. Yeah,
indeed. When I think it's going back to the early days of when we kind of pivoted over to OKRs, and there were a lot of OKR software companies popping up all over the place at that point. And I was spending some time in Berlin working with, dare I say, a couple of your competitors at that point. But we did connect nevertheless, didn't we? And It's been really good to see how Perdoo's developed since then. And in some respects, you might say how you've kind of bucked the trend of the marketplace, because I think it's we both, I think, from different perspectives, seen the market evolve quite a lot over the past 7 or 8 years, haven't we? So what have been the principal observations that you've seen over that time?
Well, when we started, there weren't a lot of players in this market at all. You had Status Path, you had Weekdone, but they were more focused on digitizing the weekly status update that employees used to send at the end of the week to their managers. And at least Weekdone used the PPP model for that. I think it's plan, progress, and problems. And then they added goals they added OKRs to that as well. There was 7 Geese, which was like one of the first really focused on OKRs, like really being a pure play OKR solution. And then we started. The reason we started this company, now I remember, we watched a video on YouTube from Google Ventures about OKRs.
I think that must be one of the most popular OKR hits on the internet, isn't it?
Absolutely. At the time, it had like over 100,000 views, and there were questions at the end of that video that the venture companies from Google, the founders, they asked to Google, like, okay, well, what's the software that you use for this? And Google said, well, we just use a wiki. We don't use a dedicated tool for it. And then we decided, okay, let's build one. And at the time, you could still launch companies by building a very simple landing page, announcing that we will build an OKR software. We dropped a link to that website in the comments of that video, and then it started generating signups. But again, we weren't the first. I think 7 Geese and Weekdone were there before us. And then we wanted to reach out, of course, to the people from Google, right? And we wanted to reach out to, what's his name again? The author of Measure What Matters?
John Doerr.
John Doerr, yeah. We actually just wanted to reach out to him. And then soon after, that he announced that he invested in BetterWorks, which then I think was the first big player that came into this market with serious funding behind them. Yeah, and then what happens, right? People see that you start making money in that industry, and that's when competition intensifies.
Yeah, and a lot more started popping up all over the place. Some being pure play, as you put it, some being kind of OKRs and a bit more in addition to that. But the market's kind of really evolved, hasn't it? Over, I would say, over the past 4 or 5 years, we've seen quite a change. I think, from my perspective, I've seen quite a lot of consolidation. Have you recognised that?
Yeah, well, I think at the top, at some point, we had like 30 competitors, which was insane. I'm not sure if it was consolidation. I think there's an 7 Geese got acquired, but there's a number of them that went out of business or just closed their business. Because it's not an easy industry to be in, right? That's one of the reasons why there was also a market for OKR consultants, because you don't fix this problem for companies just by offering a software.
It's not plug and play, is it? Really?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's so. Perdoo was a pure play OKR solution when we got started, but that was always difficult, right? Like also from a logical perspective, you were always thinking like, well, there's more going on in companies than just OKRs. So at some point we added KPIs into the mix, which wasn't at all appreciated at the time. People found it confusing, and there was lots of talk around companies to move from KPIs to OKRs. And we had it in Perdoo as really being a different type of goal, right? Where we say, well, KPIs is really for your business as usual, everything that you do to keep the engine running. If you picture your organization as a car, and OKRs are more like your roadmap, right? Getting your organization towards the desired point into the future. So nowadays, prospects ask if we offer both KPIs and OKRs. So the market has changed a lot in that respect. But I remember when we started offering that first, that wasn't at all appreciated. That was made selling Perdoo even more complicated.
It's interesting because that kind of reflects the experience that I think myself and the rest of my team have had over the years. And I would say that's around kind of an increased understanding from customers, clients on different types of performance measures and where to use the right type of measure. And I wonder if that's something that has kind of happened as a result of the OKR movement, because KPI, let's face it, KPIs have been around a lot longer than OKRs in sort of common sort of
absolutely been around for 100 years now.
And KPIs used to be used for everything, but I think the introduction of OKRs kind of challenged that. But at the first instance, people were like, "Is it one or the other?" But no, actually, it's both, because it's different types of performance, as you say.
There's a lot of value in tracking them alongside each other.
100%. 100%. Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the benefits of this whole sort of movement over the past 10 years has been to raise the knowledge and understanding out there in the market's collective mind. Yeah. So do you see that clients are a little bit clearer in specifying what it is that they want now, or are they still looking for you to really kind of hold their hand through? We know we need to improve, but we're not sure how to do it.
No, it's clearer now. So, like in the early days when people came to us, like they were new to OKR. And nowadays that has changed a lot. We still get prospects that have zero experience with OKRs, but I think the majority now does have some experience. At least they have some people in their team that have worked at other companies that were doing OKRs, or they have started tracking OKRs in spreadsheets and then maybe worked with a consultant to help them implement that effectively. And then as they want to roll it out to the rest of the organization, that's when then Perdoo comes into play. So I think earlier on, we were really at the start of an organization's journey with OKR, and usually we now come a little later, which I think is also more natural.
And do you know what? I was actually thinking back to, like I said, when we met in Berlin back in the early days of it all, and I think I think it was the second time that we met was when you, I say you as in Perdoo, ran a sort of a consultant forum day. Do you remember that day? And I think that's what
was a Partners Day.
Partners Day, yeah. So and I think that was, I guess, from my perspective, because it was just me at that point. I didn't really have a team at that stage, but it was interesting because I think you guys got how important a consultant is in the sales process, and ultimately the longevity of OKRs for a client.
Yeah, for sure. No, we started offering. We wanted to partner with consultants, right? Because we, like a consultant, typically goes on site and really works with the team there, and that's just such a unique experience that you don't want to get into that as a software. But we started offering OKR coaching as well, because and then again, like that's definitely not a replacement for what a consultant would do, right? Like we do that via video. It's also not at all a significant part of our business anymore, and we do it all via online video calls. But there were just so many companies then that didn't have the appropriate budget, right, to work with a consultant, and we had to fix that. And I think nowadays, when organizations of a certain size, right? If you talk about very small companies, like they'll figure it out on their own. Implementing OKRs in a 20 people team is also a lot simpler than rolling it out across 1,000 or 5,000 people company. Yeah, and then you definitely need to get the additional help, which is why we only embraced the fact that other people started offering OKR consulting.
And I think that's what, in a large part, set you apart from the other software companies, because you did have a more collaborative, more sort of partnership orientated approach. Where in my experience, majority of the others just were not interested, just wanted the sign-ups, and they were happy to take them for as long or as little as they would sign up for.
Yeah, there's also a few that really try to start their own consulting, right, next to the software. But
that's right, and I think that came with kind of the maturity or the evolution of the market. And I know there's been a few that have tried. I'm thinking of one in particular that tried to acquire a consultancy. And
they actually did. I think we have the same.
Yeah, but I'm not too sure how that's gone, because I've seen the consultants working that went over to that company work for other companies as well. So
they closed the consulting business.
Right. Okay. That's
building a successful software company is hard enough, and then also trying to build a successful consulting business, which is like in some ways the exact opposite of a software business.
Completely different sales process, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, exactly. So, it is a challenge.
The upfront revenue is, of course, nice and attractive, but
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's really interesting, and of course, this brings us around to perhaps the biggest announcement in the OKR software market in recent years, and that is that Microsoft are retiring Viva Goals, after only acquiring Ally a few years ago and plugging it into Viva and turning it into Viva Goals. What are your thoughts around that?
Good question. I didn't see it coming. So for me, it was a total surprise, but I spoke to others in the industry that said this was expected. I think, I'm not sure what is behind it. Like I understood that they closed other Viva products as well, and that they also needed engineers to focus. Well, they needed more engineers to focus on AI. Maybe that only explains why they did it now, and otherwise they would have done it maybe 1 or 2 years from now. But what I've understood is that Microsoft was trying to really simplify OKRs, and there were just weird ways in which progress propagation was structured, and they didn't offer proper KPIs on the platform, even though they were labeled KPIs, but for them it was a featured key result. So they tried to simplify certain things that I don't think you could simplify. And then at the same time, what we've just discussed, right? It's to make your customers successful, oftentimes you need to offer more than just the software, especially when you think about the types of customers that Microsoft is focusing on, right? Like the big enterprises. You can't just offer a Viva product, let organizations roll with it and think that will be a success. So you need to offer other services on top of it. And I've understood that they had little appetite to expand in that area or to solve that need.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, my experience has kind of does reflect a lot of what you said there. From the outset, they were, I believe, committed to a distinct partnership strategy. They were making investments in establishing relationships with some very key players in the market space. They brought us in because we were close to Ally in the first place, which was interesting because we found ourselves alongside, the big boys like Accenture and PwC, which was kind of...
Those are the players that Microsoft was trying to bring in.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And Korn Ferry and so on and so forth, because they're the typical partner relationships that they have when it comes to integration.
But
after about 6 months, there was a distinct change in direction, and I think it came about from a reprioritization around investment. And that was when Copilot was starting to come onto the market, and they were going to throw everything at Copilot.
Yeah.
So they closed down the partnerships, so on and so forth. And we're still happy for us to sell Viva Goals if we wanted to, and it was still there to access if we needed it to. But it didn't feel like they were particularly investing in the product. And I think over the couple of years that they were they've been running it, I think they came to realise a lesson which I think we've all known for quite a while, and that is that, okay, you look at an organisation, a typical client of Microsoft, you're talking tens of thousands of people, all right, in a corporate. And yeah, sure, every one of those will need an Outlook license, will need an Office license, everything, okay? But that's not necessarily the case with Viva Goals, okay? Because not everyone will be hands-on with the organization's OKRs. People that are in transactional roles, in operational roles, so on.
Absolutely, yeah.
The
especially within organizations of those sizes, right?
Exactly.
That makes sense too.
Exactly. So you got an organization of 20,000 people, and you're expecting, we've got 20,000 Office licenses, 20,000, Outlook licenses, and all this, that, and the other in there. We want 20,000 Viva Goals licenses. It was never going to be the case.
No.
It was never going to be the case. And so
that may be the end result of a very long, very intense implementation project, right? But you want to start small, you want to start with leadership management, and then expand over time. But that will take a long time before you get to that level. Yeah,
100%. So when you're looking at an organization that's got, like I say, 20,000 people, and actually after 18 months worth of work, all that they have bought is maybe 250, 300 licenses for Viva Goals, that's a bit of a wake-up call for them. That's a bit of a wake-up call for Microsoft. And I think maybe it just ended up not having the volumes which they needed to make it work, to justify it being one of their products. It's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, the migration away from it presents opportunities for players like yourselves.
We were never so focused on these really large corporates. And when you think of smaller companies, you actually have the majority of the company using it. At least they'll have a view-only license. I like it. I still enjoy working mostly with companies that are being run by the people that own the company, because they just care such a great deal about what we do.
Yeah, and they act a lot faster, and you can get decisions made a lot easier. I get that. Owner-managed, owner-led organizations are still, the sweet spot. What I think was also interesting around the whole Viva Goals thing was that they were getting penetration off the back of being in, 99% of organizations across the world, but they only had the one type of license. They only had a full access license. So, to take that scenario of a 20,000 people organization, you've got 300 people that are hands-on with OKRs. What about the other 19,700? They perhaps there's definite value in them understanding what the OKRs are and how they're progressing, but there was never a view-only license, if you see what I mean.
Okay, it surprises me.
Yeah. So I think they missed a trick on that front as well. So ultimately, I think I was disappointed because if Microsoft are doing it, then people sit up and take notice. There's no two ways about it because they carry a lot of weight in. But
therefore, it's still great that they tried it. I think it did a lot with OKRs becoming mainstream, and I think
it did. It was kind of the next. It was the next boost for OKRs after John's book, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
and because I think lots of companies had access to Viva, like it put OKRs on the radar of a lot of companies that simply hadn't heard of it before. So I still think it's good, and you can imagine that nowadays there's just so many companies reaching out to us that are looking for a replacement for Viva Goals. So it's not that these companies are abandoning OKRs; they're going to continue doing it and looking for an alternative solution.
I was a little bit concerned that the narrative might go something like Microsoft are dropping it, so therefore OKRs are dead or OKRs are no good. But I haven't seen any sign of that yet.
That's another interesting topic to talk about, I think. Like, so what is OKR really? Like in Dutch, you have this saying, old wine in new sackets, or in
it's a reinvention of the wheel.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have other frameworks. Like we have customers that work with EOS, that work with 40X, and these other frameworks. And when you look at the components, and when you look at how you define these components, it all boils down to the same. You just put different labels on them. I do think when I look at these other frameworks, that OKRs are easier to understand than any of the other frameworks that have been created. And it's like SMART goals, that was just a terrible way to formulate goals. But what 40X is doing is meaningful. What EOS is doing is meaningful. I'm sure you have other frameworks as well, OGSM and others. I think OKRs are among those. Is definitely the easiest to understand framework. And I think it helped. I think it helped establish another type, like KPIs, as you mentioned, right? They've been around for over a century, I think, and every organization is using them. Some don't realize they're using it, but if you ask what sort of metrics they track, and then you have gross profit margin and revenue growth, well, these would all be KPIs. And I think what OKRs help do is to establish another type of goals next to KPIs, right? Like you can't run your company just off KPIs, like
just by looking. Exactly. Yeah. You can't run the business by just looking at how much money you've got in the bank. You can't. So
and and even if you look at just your gross profit margin, or you would increase the target value for your KPI, say, okay, let's increase gross profit margin to 60%. And all right, how are we going to do that? Right? OKRs are a great tool to help you achieve such a thing.
And the way that's something which has been leveled at me, and I know the rest of my team, particularly, when we've been introducing the concept of OKRs for the first time to people who had not really encountered them before, and they ask, why is this just the latest fad? Is it, like I say, a reinvention of the wheel? I've always described it as, yes, I take your point that you made that it's execution by a different name. But for me, I've always kind of differentiated OKRs by talking about how it's a collection of principles and practices rather than a really rigid methodology, which I think 40X and EOS tend to be a little bit more rigid, don't they? You make a very good point. So I was only talking about OKRs as a way to formulate a goal. 100%. And whilst I think there's both a benefit and a risk in this, because OKRs are very much down to interpretation and how they're applied. And in terms of how, I don't mean in terms of the actual OKR itself, but I mean in terms of the general sort of application of OKRs and the governance of them and the mechanics around them and so on and so forth. And in many respects, the culture around them.
Yeah.
You know, they can be used as a weapon as well as an enabler in the wrong hands, can't they? So, like I say, brings it back to me to principles and practices, and the key principles being that you can really leverage untapped energy in the organization if you use them as a means by which to open up problem solving. You know, we want to increase gross margin. So what ideas have we got? What new campaigns can we put in place? What things have we not tried yet? What's worth? And then that can evolve into a whole load of experimentation, and then learning, and then continuous improvement, which is something which I think you'll never get from just using KPIs alone. And I think that for me has been the big differentiator for OKRs.
Yeah. No, and you're totally right about that cultural mindset that is required, which means that for many companies that will be a mind shift that they have to go through, which will be a good thing anyway, right? Whether or not you decide to implement OKRs, like making that shift in your culture is beneficial anyway. And that's, I think, that's one thing that I always appreciated about There Be Giants. Like you guys focused on that early on. If I remember correctly. Yeah,
we did. And that's, unashamedly, that's my sort of hangover from what the business was when in its first instance, which was a performance coaching consultancy when I worked with business owners and people in sport as well. And so I always got the importance of mindset, and consequently, when you look at an organization, the culture is its collective mindset, you might say.
Yeah.
So, that's always been important. And it's still, you can still see the threads of that in the work that we do, specifically in our OKR Coach Academy, which I would say 50% of the curriculum is on the mechanics and governance around OKRs, and the other 50% is on the cultural and human factors around OKRs. Because if you don't get that right, then it doesn't matter, how often you check in and how many OKRs you've got and how clear your key results are. If you haven't got the right culture around it, it'll either be a talking shop because nothing will move forward, or people will be so fearful of giving a truthful update that what you're getting is just worthless data.
Definitely.
The cultural side has always been super important to us. So, with all this in mind, and given that you are as Perdoo, I don't know whether it's fair to say this, but one of the few still standing. I think. I mean, what can you share with us around how you're kind of evolving things for Perdoo? Because clients are always going to be sort of increasing their expectations, coming up with new use cases, so on and so forth. So, what ideas have you got that you're working on for the evolution of the product then?
Well, one thing is closely related to what we just discussed, and that's that we're going to become framework agnostic, so to say. Mm-hmm. And no one ever asked to change terminology inside the app around like strategy or KPIs, just because these things are so well defined and have been around for so long. Mm-hmm. But as I said, right, we have customers that work with EOS, for example, and they say like logically your product makes total sense to us. It's just that we just implemented EOS, and I don't want to throw in new terms in my organization. So can I allow people to change like certain terminologies, like what is objectives, key results, and initiatives, and also giving more flexibility around like how you want progress to propagate. Like that's a tricky area because doing it one way is certainly better than doing it another way. But sometimes organizations are set on doing it in a specific way, even though that has significant downsides, and then we still want to be able to facilitate that. AI, of course, is a big topic, although it's tricky. And AI, we're working on it, and it works well at the micro level. All right, so if you have a key result and you're looking for inspiration on what are good initiatives to work on to achieve such a key result, there it could really work. But I don't think it works very, very well yet. Well, at least not if you productize it, right? There's always a question, okay, why should I build this into our product, right? It must be a reason. And productizing it and then letting it suggest what is a good strategy for your company. Like sometimes you get good responses, sometimes the responses aren't great at all. And it's very hard. Like for those kind of things, every time I test something, I still think that using AI outside of our product is simply just generating better results. Like when I test something like that, I would test Gemini, I would test ChatGPT. Sometimes you get better responses in one or the other. The big benefit is that you can actually have a conversation around things, and then over time, during the responses, get to better results. So at that level, at the micro level, definitely you can expect that from us soon. Also, if you have a KPI on Perdoo, like, and the KPI is not performing well, like we could suggest OKRs that you could work on. From our tests, we get good results there, but at a higher level, that's something that probably too soon, if you can ever pull it off. I don't know.
I think you make a really interesting distinction there, because you're distinguishing between the use of AI at a micro level, which is my KPI is not working. What can it suggest as, a focus area for the next 3 months to get it on track, I suppose. I think that's a really interesting one. And I from my perspective as a consultant working with organizations and OKRs, I can see the value in that. Where I have serious concerns is in developing, using AI to generate the OKRs at the top level of the organization. Because I think, the alignment is as much about mindset as it is about actually writing OKRs that, align. Because you don't get to those OKRs that align until people have switched on, until it's clicked for them and they can see it, they can visualize it in their minds. And you don't get that by interrogating Gemini or ChatGPT.
No, and there's also so much value in asking in your own team, right? The moment you set OKRs with your marketing team, for example, is going around the table and ask everybody, what do you believe what our OKR should be? Like that input, that for which you need to know all the context of the company and their experiences and what they know is going on in the market or with prospects or customers. You can't get that from AI.
No, you can't. And also there's the implied message through asking their opinions that you value their opinions. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad message to be giving out to, to those that work with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay. That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
At that level, like, at least from our experience, there's also not a very high demand. It's not that people ask it very often, despite everything that's going on in the world right now surrounding AI.
Yeah. No, I think for me, I think you've nailed it in terms of where AI can add value when it comes to OKRs. I do think it's very much at the micro level. And I'll be interested to see how that evolves in the products, actually. Anyway, I think we've just about reached the end of our time today. Henrik, it's been really good I feel like we've chewed the cud on how things have gone over the past few years in the marketplace and so on and so forth. Hopefully we've not stepped on anybody's toes too much in sharing our opinions. But thank you very much for giving us your time. If people want to reach out to you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
They can just go to www.perdoo.com, perdoo.com.
Excellent. And we'll obviously have that in the show notes as well. So if you just want to scroll down to those and have a click on that, you'll find the link there. So again, thank you for your time today. Thanks also for listening. And it was always great to have you along. And I look forward to having you join me on the next episode of Giant Talk. Take care now.